Lesson: Breach of contract and remedies. Breach of contract in the context of employment law occurs when either the employer or the employee fails to fulfill their obligations as stipulated in the employment contract. Understanding breach of contract and its remedies is crucial for HR leaders, as it helps them navigate potential disputes and maintain harmonious workplace relationships. A breach can be minor, such as a slight delay in payment, or major, such as termination without notice. The repercussions of a breach depend on its nature and the terms of the contract itself. HR leaders must be adept at identifying breaches, assessing their impact, and implementing appropriate remedies to mitigate any adverse effects. The first step in addressing a breach of contract is to accurately identify the type of breach that has occurred. A material breach is a significant failure that strikes at the heart of the contract, rendering further performance pointless. For instance, if an employer fails to pay an employee's salary, it constitutes a material breach, as payment is the core obligation of the employer. Conversely, a minor breach, also known as a partial breach, is a slight deviation from the terms that does not substantially affect the contract's overall purpose. An example would be delivering a project a day late without impacting the business. HR leaders must evaluate the breach's severity to determine the appropriate response. One effective framework for assessing breaches is the four-step approach: identification, analysis, resolution, and documentation. Identification involves determining the existence of a breach by comparing actual performance against contractual obligations. Analysis requires examining the breach's impact on the contract's overall purpose and the parties involved. Resolution involves negotiating a remedy that restores the aggrieved party to the position they would have been in had the breach not occurred. Finally, documentation ensures that the resolution process is recorded for future reference and compliance purposes. Remedies for breach of contract can be categorized into legal and equitable remedies. Legal remedies typically involve monetary compensation, known as damages, to cover the losses incurred due to the breach. Damages can be compensatory, aiming to cover direct losses and costs, consequential, covering indirect and foreseeable losses, or punitive, intended to punish willful misconduct. For example, in the case of Hadley v. Baxendale, the court established the principle that damages must be reasonably foreseeable at the time the contract was made. Equitable remedies, on the other hand, are non-monetary and include specific performance, injunctions, and restitution. Specific performance compels the breaching party to fulfill their contractual obligations, especially in cases involving unique services or goods. An injunction prevents a party from performing a specific act that would breach the contract, while restitution aims to restore the non-breaching party to their pre-contractual position. For instance, if an employer breaches a non-compete clause, the court may issue an injunction preventing the employee from joining a competitor. HR leaders can utilize practical tools such as mediation and arbitration to resolve breaches of contract. Mediation involves a neutral third party who facilitates discussions between the parties to reach a mutually acceptable solution. Arbitration, a more formal process, involves an arbitrator making a binding decision based on the evidence presented. These alternative dispute resolution methods are often quicker and more cost-effective than litigation, making them attractive options for resolving employment contract disputes. A case study illustrating the effectiveness of ADR is the resolution of an employment dispute at Company X, where an employee alleged wrongful termination. Instead of proceeding to court, the parties opted for arbitration, resulting in a settlement that included reinstatement and back pay. This approach saved time, reduced legal costs, and preserved the working relationship between the employer and employee. HR leaders should also be aware of statutory remedies available under employment laws. In many jurisdictions, employees have statutory rights that cannot be waived by contract, such as the right to a minimum wage, safe working conditions, and protection against discrimination. Violations of these rights can result in statutory remedies, including reinstatement, compensation, or penalties imposed on the employer. To enhance proficiency in handling breach of contract cases, HR leaders can implement training programs that focus on contract management, negotiation skills, and legal compliance. These programs should include real-world scenarios and role-playing exercises to equip HR professionals with the skills needed to identify breaches, negotiate remedies, and prevent future disputes. HR leaders must also ensure that employment contracts are well-drafted, clear, and compliant with legal requirements to minimize the risk of disputes. Contracts should clearly define the parties' obligations, performance standards, and consequences of a breach. Regular reviews and updates to employment contracts in light of changing laws and business needs are essential to maintaining their effectiveness. Additionally, HR leaders should establish a culture of open communication and trust within the organization. Encouraging employees to voice concerns and report breaches without fear of retaliation can help identify potential issues early and prevent escalation. Implementing whistleblower policies and anonymous reporting channels can further support this objective. In conclusion, understanding breach of contract and its remedies is essential for HR leaders tasked with managing employment relationships. By applying frameworks such as the four-step approach, utilizing ADR methods, and ensuring compliance with statutory rights, HR professionals can effectively address breaches and protect the interests of both the employer and employees. Investing in training and fostering a culture of transparency can further enhance an organization's ability to manage and resolve contractual disputes, contributing to a stable and productive work environment.